Welcome to Challenging Paradigm X. I am Xerxes Washington, and in my podcast I interview people who challenge the status quo. My guest today is Hauxita. I met Hauxita in 2018 when I retreated to La Gomera after my 11-year relationship and marriage broke up. We worked with Kambo, a frog poison from the Amazonian giant leaf frog. Quite frankly, it changed my life and initiated the metamorphosis to become the person I am today. Hauxita is a very remarkable woman. She went to South America to heal her breast cancer all on her own. In the last 7 years, she spent more than 3 years with indigenous tribes in South America, learning from their healers. Her aim is to inform people about the path of working with sacred medicines like Kambo, Ayahuasca, Rapé, Wachuma and Bufo in a sustainable way. Furthermore, she will give us an authentic perspective about the indigenous healing path. In this podcast episode, we will talk about shamans, and Hauxita will deconstruct the myth around the shaman label. She will tell what drove her for the last years to travel alone and visit different indigenous tribes. She will talk about the indigenous warrior medicine Kambo, the importance of the dieta, about life in the jungle, medicine tourism and the Western approach to indigenous medicines, and which paradigms she believes need to be challenged in the world today. In this episode, when we talk about medicine or sacred medicine, we do not refer to Western medicine, but rather indigenous natural substances that are considered by indigenous people as sacred medicines. Furthermore, do not look to this interview for conventional medical advice. So, if you're interested in these topics and want to enter another dimension, stay tuned. So hi, here's Xerxes, and today I'm here with Hauxita. I know you for some time, and we work together. And what was always really striking to me is that most people who do the things that you do, they call themselves shaman, but you don't. So please tell me why don't you call yourself a shaman? Although you do a lot of things that people who call themselves shamans do.
Well, I believe that the word shaman, the term shaman as it is used nowadays, especially in the new age approach to healing, is not used in its proper way.
Okay.
The word shaman has a true origin linguistically, yeah? It goes back, as far as we know, I can't prove this, but this is what some sources say. It goes back to some indigenous group using a specific language, and there they were using a specific word that is referring to our nowadays shaman, and that was like in East Siberia 5,000 years ago. Yeah, in their understanding, it's a person who knows, a person who's bridging between the spirit world and the world we are living in. Here in South America, where I have been living and studying in the last 7 years, no one of true connection with that spirit world would call themselves shaman. I never encountered that word ever in all my travels into the jungle.
Okay, that's very interesting.
So they call themselves maybe translated the healer of the village or the chief and the elder of the village who's also supporting the community to heal. But shaman as such, I never ran across it. A lot of people who are working in that realm of connecting our world with that spirit world, they wouldn't even use the word to describe themselves. They just do what they do. And that's all it is. They don't have to call themselves something. As a friend of mine is saying when he's closing his ceremonies, if someone asks you, who are you? and you answer with what you do, like with one profession that you do or one passion, you're just going to describe and minimize a part of yourself that is just that, but you are much more beyond this, you know? So,
Okay.
and I'm just always disturbed by the use of that word shaman, which is used quite a lot in that scene of healing work. It's overly used. It's an overly used word, term. And I never encountered it. That's why I believe I don't call myself I'm a shaman.
Okay. So what are people calling themselves, like the medicine men and women in the indigenous cultures? What are they calling themselves?
So it depends on where you go, like which country or area in South America. But maybe they call themselves Taita, which is the grandfather, or curandero, curandera, which is the healer. They call themselves Page, which is the one that takes care of the healing of the village. Sometimes cacique. So these are the terms that I have encountered throughout the years, as well, next to the people who don't call themselves with no word. Like they just have a name, their name, you know, their personal name.
Okay. So it's very interesting because, I mean, when we talk about shamans here in the West, so the first people, at least this is my impression, the first people that we think of are South American or North American indigenous people who are the healers of the tribe. Then secondly, there is a lot of people here in the West that call themselves shaman because they have done one education or the other of a sort. So it's really interesting that you say you never encountered the word of shaman in the indigenous cultures, but does it exist in Latin America and South America in another context? Because when people go to South America, they usually refer to they visit, if they go and do medicine work, they refer to visiting shaman or shaman center, shaman healing center, or anything of that sort. Is there other people calling themselves shamans that are not the original healers of tribes?
Yeah. So one thing I just want to add before I answer this is that the use of the word, for example, shaman center, I'm going to visit my shaman in South America. This term is kind of a popular term to describe this whole realm, but is it a real term to do so? And for your question, there is a lot of people calling themselves, I am a shaman here in South America, outside of indigenous villages and indigenous context. Yes.
Okay, so what you're basically saying is that it is a popular use of, or let's say it's a commercial use for Western tourists or also Eastern tourists to use the term shaman?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay, so in a way you could say if someone calls himself shaman or refers to himself shaman or herself shaman in South America, then basically you can be quite assured that this person is A, not really a shaman, and B, quite likely doing this out of commercial reasons.
Well, you always have to look at the specific case, who's saying that and what is behind it. But the phenomenon of that term shaman is a worldwide one. And yeah, oftentimes it is connected to a commercial approach and a label, hey, I'm a shaman, so you can trust me, I'm going to heal you.
Okay.
And that's not what it is.
Okay, all right. No, it's very interesting because, as I said, and I think that most people associate it in a very different way than you refer to. Also, I know people who are in the healing space who have been to Latin America, and they refer to also always to shamans. So you're actually the first person that explains this whole thing to me in this way, and I find it very interesting. So you also mentioned another thing, that when someone says that or asks you what you do, and then you answer with one simple answer like, I am a carpenter, I'm a shaman, I'm a consultant, counselor, whatever, that you reduce yourself. So how would you describe who you are, what you do, what your life is like, however you like to describe it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the question, what do you do? How's your life like? It's a very interesting question because it's so many things. First of all, I suppose I'm a human being trying to live my life in a happy and a healthy way, in a holistic approach. I have a strong and great passion for the jungle and indigenous culture, tradition, history. And I share information about a specific medicine from the Amazon rainforest here, which is Kambo. Kambo is a frog. The indigenous people use it to treat a person for specific reasons. So I have a YouTube channel where I'm sharing some educational videos about the topic of Kambo medicine. I see myself in that position, that a responsibility I have, because I believe in that medicine so much and I love it so much, is to share information. I'm also sharing the medicine to people in one-on-one treatments, one-on-one ceremonies. Besides that, I study a lot about the indigenous cultures that I'm interested in by living with them. And also when I'm not in the jungle living with them, I'm studying their languages, their body art, their chantings, their healing songs, which I recorded. And so a lot of that rotates for me around studying the mythology and the cosmology of the indigenous people, which fulfills me because it's like interwoven in everything I have experienced so far. And another thing that I was about to start, and then now we are in this new situation of worldwide lockdown, is to look for land in the lowland jungle here in the north of Peru, and to be able in a community crowdfunding project one day to buy land, to preserve it, to conserve it, to build a bigger project for the future, to be able to buy a big piece of land, maybe 10,000 hectares, and be able to save that jungle from being destroyed. If I buy it, a company cannot buy it and destroy it. Ecuador now just has sold a very big amount of Amazon rainforest in Ecuador. I think it's one third of Amazon rainforest in Ecuador is sold now to China. So the reason why I want to do that is to give back to the jungle where I have received so much of my own life and so much healing and transformation. This is what I'm focusing, but also I'm practicing a kickboxing, which is another way of energy tool to move some things in life. And just currently I just try to be present in that moment that we are all living in right now.
I would like to go a bit into Kambo medicine. I've experienced it. You initiated me in a way, and I think it's a very potent medicine. Perhaps of all the medicines I've worked with, it's the one although it is not as fancy as others, I like most. And I had most important transformational processes with. And it's interesting, I know a lot of people who are doing medicine work for many years. They haven't done it and they don't have any interest to do it. But what I want to really ask you is if you could share with us what Kambo medicine is, and also give us maybe a picture of what it is beyond just what it does to the body, but what it is in a bigger picture.
Yeah, sure. So Kambo is a term for the giant leaf frog that inhabits the Amazon basin here in South America. The biological term is Philomedusa bicolor. It's a night-active frog that lives high up in the trees. And the indigenous people use its poison, its secretion, already for a long time to either prepare the men of the tribe to go on a hunt, or to heal something they call the dark, heavy spirit that inhabits the system, that has become an energy matter and therefore needs to get treated. Yeah, to explain these things a little better, the Kambo medicine for the indigenous people is warrior medicine, because it connects you stronger to the spirits of the jungle. You can hear better, you can smell better, you can see better. You're not that hungry, you're not that thirsty, so going on a hunt for a couple of days and nights is less of a problem. But it's also giving you this center of being focused and a specific warrior attitude. Yeah. On the other hand, when we talk about healing a person, helping a person to get rid of a specific energy, that is a process to help the person release something that has accumulated in the system. Yeah, the way the medicine gets applied is by burning the first layer of the skin with small dots in specific parts of the body that are connected to, so to say, the lymphatic system and its entrance gateways. And there, the person receives a few dots of that poison. Yeah, because in nature, the Kambo frog is releasing that poison to fend off predators, like a snake tries to eat the frog, and so the poison gets released and the snake lets go. It's a survival mechanism. Yeah. When it comes to the treatment, it's important to stick with a specific diet and also a fasting before you receive the medicine that you receive in the early morning, usually in the jungle context. You have to drink on the empty stomach a specific amount of water or kaisuma. Kaisuma is a beverage the indigenous people make out of the yucca or manioc root, which is kind of the jungle potato. It's a very important supplement for them. So you drink this on the empty stomach and you receive the medicine. It's a quite quick and strong process. And what is happening is that the medicine doesn't contain any psychoactive alkaloids, but what it does, it contains peptides, a wide range of peptides that is activating and renewing and refreshing and healing your own peptide range in the body. It's activating your lymphatic system, it's boosting your lymphatic system, it's cleaning it out. And the way you react from the outside can look quiet and intimidating or strong or intense, because you have a very strong physical experience, first of all, with it. You get hot, the heart is beating faster, you might swell up in the face, you might look like a frog, you might even swell up from the inside. You feel a pressure in your upper body, pulsating behind your ears. You can have different sensations in that respect. You can also have some pains in the body. You can have some emotional process going on. And what's going to happen after a few minutes is that you usually going to start vomiting. Kambo is a fire medicine. Yeah. So with the liquid that we are drinking on the empty stomach, we're helping it to come out. Usually diarrhea is also a part of it. Yeah. This is the initial process of purging, so to say. It's not just on a scientific level, boosting your system and regenerating your cells and helping you to heal specific ailments like chronic diseases. But what it is doing is also taking out energy that has become something chronic in your system, maybe a depression, maybe a sadness, maybe not knowing where to go in life. Personally, for me, the Kambo medicine gives you a direction for your life. Yeah, it's a very gentle and loving medicine, the spirit of the frog, even if the process might sound and look intense. But the spirit of the Kambo becomes your friend and your guide, and it will be there for you to help you maneuver and navigate through your specific intention to work with that medicine. This is how I perceive it personally. And the process itself, of course, demands from you to a specific way of commitment to, okay, this feels intense, but I'm not gonna panic now, and it's important to breathe and stay connected and go for it. No, like receive it as a blessing and be strong in that moment and be aware of what is going on, because it can be an intense experience which can bring people to the edge of not knowing what to do with that, or panicking, or having some fear, or wanting it to be over fast. But once you connect with it, your work with it also will change on a longer term, because you then know how you're going to react and all of this, and you will be able to perceive more of the energetic and spiritual benefits of that medicine.
Okay, very interesting. Maybe I'd like to add, for my personal experience with Kambo, I think my first session took maybe 1 hour, and there was a lot of resistance against what was going on in the process. I have to say, I was also in a quite special situation. I was just separated from the woman I was in relationship with for 11 years and 8 years married, and we were just about to get divorced. And this medicine really helped me to process a lot. And it was interesting how the first few times, actually, there was so much resistance to go into the process and to purge. And then really, after a couple of times, the whole process took 10 minutes. And the 1 hour process, of course, much more intense, because it's an intense physical process. And that's also the reason I feel like, I don't know what your experience is from the people you know, but I feel like, because it's just an intense process and doesn't have any psychoactive or obvious psychoactive effects, that a lot of people don't want to do it, because it's not, as I said before, I would call it fancy. But I can say it was my personal experience, although it's so intense, one of the best medicines, or actually one of the best, is not framing it right. I would say it's the most valuable medicine I have personally experienced in my life. So what's your experience with people who don't have the Kambo experience, or have Kambo experience maybe in connection to other medicines? For example, I've heard they often do it after Ayahuasca sessions. What's your experience as Kambo being a medicine, a standalone medicine on the one hand, and at the other hand, when it comes to the resistance that people have against the medicine in general to try it? And like in my case, the first few times where I really fought against the medicine, not allowing myself to purge, and I guess I'm not the only one that has this experience and that has this type of approach within the first few sessions.
Yeah. So in general, what I perceive is that Kambo is a underestimated medicine in general when it comes to the sacred medicines. Yeah. It is always seen as, yeah, you can clean out toxins with that medicine and it's good for your health. But that's not giving credit to this complexity and to the capacity that the medicine is sharing with the people. Another thing is that a lot of people hear stories. They hear a lot of stories about people who have received the medicine, and a lot of traumatic experiences shared. A lot of people having had bad experiences with this medicine, yeah. And there is a lot of people out there who have experiences that are shocking to listen to. And I believe it has something to do that maybe people do not understand this medicine entirely who share it. Not all of them, but there is some risk to health when it comes to this medicine. There are counterindications when it comes to work with this medicine. Because it is so strong on the system, you have to be careful with medical counterindications, pharmaceutical, chronic diseases and all of that. So that is one part of it.
Sorry to interrupt you. It is actually a dangerous medicine if not applied properly, because it's a poison, isn't it?
Oh yeah. So
I mean, for the people who don't know it at all, I mean, the way you talk about it now is there can be problems, but in reality, it's a poison, and not applied properly, it can kill you.
Yeah,
isn't it?
Of course, it can lead to reactions in your body that can lead to a heart attack, or you not being able to breathe anymore, having an anaphylactic shock, and that of course leads to death. So it's a poison, but you need to know how much of that poison and how much you have to use from that poison. Yeah, like the quantity, but also how do you apply it? Like, what's the pathway? What's the way to work with that medicine? So it's not just that easy. It's not that I'm going to drink that and I'm going to purge and it's all going to be good. It's not like that, you know. There are also counterindications with other sacred medicines. Yeah. It's not that Kambo is the only one that has counterindications or can risk your life in a specific moment. There are also other medicines. But to be sure that you're not going to be put at risk, you have to talk to the person beforehand and go through a specific checklist of counterindications and really ask the specific questions and go into that. It's not just something that you share. When it comes to the reference that you gave to having resistance and blockage, oftentimes we are coming into a process where we want to heal something with Kambo, coming from a specific consciousness about ourselves. So, for example, very simple example, and a lot of people will be able to connect to it. I'm coming out of a relationship and I'm heartbroken and I just feel terrible. Yeah. So they want to feel better again, right? But what is behind that relationship and what the relationship is triggering in the process of separation is connected to things that are even older than that relationship, to maybe some experiences you had in your childhood or teenage time, even some experiences that you are not so aware of right now or that have kind of moved from consciousness to subconsciousness. So resistance, having a resistance in your system towards the process or the medicine is something very normal, because you have been functioning the way you have been functioning and feeling for a long time. And then there is something coming into your system and it's like shaking it all up, but not on the way of, oh, I'm having a vision of, something beautiful, like with other entheogenic medicines and approaches. And it's beautiful. No, it's like taking you and shaking you up, and it's really intense. And then your cellular intelligence, so to say, and the vibration in your body, which is used to that kind of level of vibration, now gets shaken up. And what comes next is something else. But we are holding on to it naturally because we have never learned something else. And we are used to it. We are used to function in a specific way. And when you are used to something, it's your comfort zone. So it's hard to get out of it. It's hard to move out of it. It's a challenge to change your life and really face it. So of course it's normal and natural, and there's no big deal about this, to feel a resistance or to have a resistance blockage is showing throughout the process. What is important is this medicine is also not for everybody. Not every sacred medicine is for everybody out there. You really have to feel the call. And even if you are aware of, wow, it's a difficult process and I have resistance and wow, that was a crazy ride. But still, if you feel like you want to continue working with it, if you have the call and you have the yes, because it's your free choice to work with this medicine, you work with it. But if you feel like that's not for me, no one should be forced to work with that medicine or with any other medicine.
What I wanted to also ask you in the respect of any medicine, sacred medicine, and specific now Kambo, because we talked about Kambo now, is the role of the dieta. Also perhaps connected to the dangers of of medicines. So maybe to give you some more context why I'm also interested in that. I mean, what I hear sometimes when people, sending messages on Facebook or other platforms, email, whatever, saying, yeah, we still have one spot or one person can still join this Kambo retreat that starts tomorrow or in 2 days. And what I know from my personal work with you is that dieta has a very important role. Or is it a role that you give it to the dieta? Or is that your experience that you have from the jungle? So I'd be interested what the role of a dieta is, how important it is, if it's just optional or not, when it comes to preparing for medicine, rituals, taking sacred medicines. Please, if you could give us some context.
Yeah, sure. So let's talk about this concept of dieta, first of all, so people can understand a little bit about this, or the diet, so to say. So when I started working with the sacred medicines in the Peruvian rainforest, I was following a specific tradition of healing. And in that specific tradition, it was not just about drinking ayahuasca in nighttime ceremonies with the healer, but also to do a specific dieta. This is how they call it here, the diet, with one specific plant. I did a lot of plant diets throughout the years. So what the framework is that you are deep in the jungle, you sit in your own wooden hut alone, you have no electricity, no Wi-Fi, of course. You should not, in very strict dietas, you should not read like books or listen to music. What you do the whole day is like, well, you are in the jungle and you're with yourself and you're meditating. And you drink either daily or in a specific rhythm the extract or the tea of a plant or a tree. It might be the leaf, the flower, the root, the bark, whatever part of that plant is in the tradition. The medicine will be prepared for you by the healer the person who provides that healing and the medicine, you will start drinking this plant medicine. Yeah. And the reason why you do that, you have usually a specific intention. Either the person asks you what you want to work on or heal, or they don't even talk to you and they choose for you the plant because they know what you need. They see where you have to start, because in the Amazon rainforest you can have plant dietas with, I believe, more than 500 plants. So it's a lot of options. So you drink these medicines, and the spirit of the plant, which in the Peruvian tradition here is the teacher. It becomes your teacher. Will come to you in dreams in the nighttime. Will talk to you throughout the day. Will show itself in specific teachings. So what you do is you enter the spirit world and you start communicating with the plant, and the plant is going to share its heart and its teachings and its understanding with you. But you have to keep some specific rules for that. So there are dietas, you can only eat a specific fish that only eats specific things. And if you eat another fish that doesn't go with the vibration of the plant, and you break the dieta, and it's not going to work anymore. So the general rules or setup is that you are, as I experienced it, I'm not allowed to talk to another person, which is not the person who makes my food or the healer. So everyone else I'm not allowed to talk to, or I'm not allowed to come closer than 20 meters. I'm not allowed to give hugs during that time. I'm not allowed to leave my hut in the jungle. I can only eat very specific foods. Usually the taste is without any spices or something like exciting to eat. It's like very plain and basic. Some veggies, of course, no alcohol, no cakes, no artificial sugar. All of that stuff is cut out. And in that tradition, you can work with the sacred tobacco plant to accompany the plant dieta. This is how I did it, for example. But you're not allowed to work with other medicines during the time and after the time. So the dieta starts before you receive the medicine. During the process, while you are with this medicine, it's about what do you put in your system? Which energies and vibrations do you put in your system? There are dietas you're not allowed to masturbate, and of course not to have sex, not to mix your energy or to lose your energy. And then you have to keep a specific post dieta, and that differs from person to person you're going to work with for 10 days or months after you have ingested that medicine, to maintain your alliance with that spirit and to show the respect and be able to keep that medicine healthy in your system. There are also counterindications. The stronger the plant medicine dieta gets, the riskier a counterindication with breaking the diet can be. Yeah. So I heard a story that by accident someone was eating something during a dieta, and that was causing a toxic interaction with the plant the person was ingesting on the dieta, and the person nearly died. So this is how serious it can get. And before that, it's about losing the support of the spirits or the alliance that you are entering, the friendship, the sharing that you enter with the spirit. You're gonna lose it. So to be able to keep the teachings and the spirit becoming your guide and becoming your ally in your system beyond the time that you're drinking the medicine, the rules of those traditions are important. And if you choose to work with one person, you have to respect their rules. And so when it comes to Kambo, I'm sorry, this is a bit long of an answer, but it's important to explain that. So when it comes to Kambo, and I believe the best thing you can do is like just observe how the indigenous people live. There are different ways in different indigenous tribes with Kambo medicine. Yeah, some tribes are very strict about the dieta. Some tribes are not. Yeah, there are differences and there are similarities. What I have been doing is I have been observing all of the context of how they are doing when they receive Kambo. What's the rotation here with food and energies and other medicines and so on and so on. And from my own experience, nearly doing plant dietas for 2 years in isolation in the Peruvian jungle, I have created my own approach working with Kambo. So if you want to receive Kambo from me, you should follow my diet rules, because this is what I believe in is the most effective to prepare your system and maintain your system to receive that medicine. Just a simple example. Kambo, as any other medicine, is a sacred medicine. Yeah, there's no endless supply of it. It's a sacred medicine. It's not endless frogs living on the planet. We have to be very aware of what we are doing here when we are receiving this medicine. So if you choose to work with Kambo, it's important to check in with yourself, which habits you were having in your daily life, which have not been serving you. For example, smoking a lot of cigarettes, drinking a lot of coffee. Do you really think that's healthy? So with doing Kambo, we have a chance to break through it and see what's behind that addictive behavior, for example. No? If you work with a medicine that is cleaning your lymphatic system and boosting your immune system, why would you after that drink alcohol or have a sweet cake? It doesn't make any sense. To me, it doesn't make any sense. And people might feel like that I'm very strict on this. And yeah, I am. Because I have heard or I hear people saying, oh, Kambo doesn't work on me. But the question is, yeah, what's the environment that you're creating for this medicine to enter your system? If you receive a Kambo treatment and you are having the chance to really meditate with yourself into yourself, and then an hour later you go out to party and you're so open energetically, and then you are surprised why you feel a bit weird after that night, it's obvious. No, because you mix your energy with other energies. So we have to learn to sit back in silence and in meditation and to allow something to enter our system without mixing our own energy with other energies and keeping a specific way, because it's not unhealthy to keep a healthy diet, doing Kambo and afterwards, because what you want is you want to heal something for yourself. And for that reason, you want to meet yourself in connection with the spirit of the frog, with the least disturbances as possible. And that is why I'm so strict with the diet. On the other hand, too, we are talking about peptides. These are protein strings. There's food, like dairy products, that break the effect of specific peptides of the Kambo medicine in your system. So if you receive Kambo and an hour later you have specific dairy product, it's going to stop the process of peptide function in your system due to that counterindication. I mean, you're not going to die, but you're going to lose it. You're going to lose what you were working on. You're going to interrupt the process. And for me to make sure that I have the space to share that medicine, and that the medicine can unfold its full potential and its full power and its full healing capacity, we have to create a space for that. And we have to keep that space, and not just for a day, because it's a sacred work. And we are usually coming from the Western world, needing or, wanting, wishing for healing. So we come from our Western worlds where we are not really in that flow of stepping back, but we are more in the flow of, we are consuming and we are receiving, and we are not really questioning all of that. But working with a sacred medicine from an old ancient tradition of indigenous people, we also have to take a moment and question our way of consuming energies and consuming food, because maybe both don't go together.
So the way I understand it after what you've explained now is that basically there is this level of, with the dieta, of the physical effect, but then apart from that, there's also a level of committing to a certain type of medicine work on the one hand, and at the other hand, there is a level of, you talked about respecting the spirits. And there's also this level when it comes to dieta. Do I understand it correctly?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And could you explain, I mean, a lot of people don't have a lot of an idea about spirits. Could you explain how you understand spirits when you talk about plant medicine, sacred medicine, and also basically when you talk about, I would say, things that are going on in general? Because spirits is most likely something that many people, they don't associate anything with other than just like fantasy movies or whatever.
Yeah, sure. So I would say, to start simple, you, Xaxis, you have a spirit. You have a soul, you have a heart. You are your own essence. You are an energy vibration, you are a frequency, and you're radiating this. And the way you appear is you have a body in this three-dimensional world, but inside and around that body, there are so many more things like energy vibration, aura, frequency, your soul, your heart, and all of that, things you can't like touch with the hand or see with the eyes, but you can feel them. And even if you sit there and you are in silence, I can feel you because you are radiating something. So for me, it's like that with the plants or the beings. You can also say, maybe instead of spirit, you can say an entity, a specific form of vibration and frequency that not necessarily is to be like seen and analyzed in the 3D, but it's around us. Because as we know, there are different frequencies existing. When you look into music vibration and all of this is quite obvious, no? When we take a cup of water and we, for 1 week, say nice things to that cup of water, it's gonna, under the microscope, we can see the transformation of molecules and all of these things. If we talk bad to the plant for a week, the plant is gonna like feel sad, you know? So everything has a spirit, even if it's a stone. Where I'm living here in the Andean mountains in Peru, the mountains here are sacred to the indigenous. They call them apus because they have a spirit. If you want to go on a hike, if you want to ask for support for your life or just to show respect, you're praying to the spirit of the mountain with coca leaves. You give an offering. This is the way you do. People here believe in the sacredness of their land as well as in the jungle, because everywhere is spirit and we have to respect it as well. So this is how I would describe that world.
So I would like to go a little bit into your background. Could you please tell me why you do what you do?
Yeah, why do I do what I do? I love the jungle, and I believe and trust in the teachings of the jungle that I have received, and the same for the indigenous way and the indigenous knowledge. I have deep gratitude inside myself for everything I have experienced in the jungle, and I would like to give back to Pachamama, to Mother Earth, in a sustainable way for what I have received, the healing I have received, and the way my life has changed. And so there was one journey, I think it was 3 years ago. I was traveling through the rainforest, and I was praying to the jungle that I am surrendering to her teachings, and wherever she's going to take me in life, I'm going to follow. So I committed to a specific flow, and I'm in a specific flow. The life I'm living now, it was never planned. I never made a schedule for this. There was an inner and outer revolution happening in my life, and I'm going with a flow, and I do love to share what I believe in.
Okay. So you talked about inner and outer revolutions. I would like to ask you, is that what you would call a turning point in your life?
Yeah,
And
definitely.
what is the background of this whole thing? And also, or let's say in another way, what is the background that it came to the point that you went to the jungle? And what's the big picture of this situation being an inner and outer revolution?
Yeah. So it was 2013 that I was going into the jungle for the first time for a couple of months. And the reason was to find a cure for my breast cancer, to make it very short and simple. I was diagnosed 10 years for the first time, and I was going through some hospital treatments and a lot of hospital analysis and conversations with doctors in the field. And I was just not satisfied with their approach. And on the other hand, my health state got much worse during the time of hospital treatment. So I just felt like not fully seen, and I was very disturbed by the energy in the hospitals and by the treatments and the whole way. At that time, I was in a relationship, and we had a dog together, and our dog got sick with breast cancer. So what happened is that the conventional doctor said your dog gonna die within a week, needs operation and stuff like this. But we, through some circumstances, we found out about a naturopathic veterinary doctor for our dog. So she made a natural remedy out of very simple ingredients for our dog, and within a week everything was fine again. So I started connecting with this woman who also had a background with breast cancer. That's why she changed her life. That put me on the path. At that time, I was still living in Berlin, to work with alternative natural medicines that were available in Europe. Different categories, changing my food diet. Things didn't get better, but they didn't get worse either. And then through another circumstance, a dear friend of mine, he told me about plants in the Amazon rainforest that are cytotoxic, that can kill cancer cells. And from there, I was researching, and I was having dreams about meeting the healer that I later met in the jungle. I had dreams 8 months before I went to the jungle of that healer. I was never in the jungle, I never met him. But when I arrived there, eventually 8 months later, it was all like in my dreams that I had. So being the first time in the jungle, 2013, coming from the context of living in a Western city, that was changing everything.
Would you like to elaborate on your experience in the jungle, the first time you went to the jungle? What did happen? What did it change? What was the effect?
Yeah, so just living in the thick lowland jungle is an experience in itself, because you can really feel the force of our planet and Mother Earth. And just to live in the jungle and to be surrounded by so much life and so much vibration, so much biodiversity when it comes to plant life and insects and reptiles. It was just mind-blowing. I was never in an environment like this before, and I don't think there's another environment like that on the planet that is so thick and dense with life. And just solely to be out of all my previous contexts, like there was no like civilization chatter, so to say, like no phone ringing, no internet, no distractions, just me in that nature. So to have the time to observe that nature was a teaching in itself, because finally I understood what photosynthesis meant. I never understood it in school. I was like, in biology, I was like, what is she talking about, my teacher, But later on now in the jungle, what I have experienced, and now I understand it, of course, and understanding what life and death means by observing one thing eats the other thing, and it's about survival. It's about pure survival. And to live in the jungle while the thunder is happening and the trees around your hut are falling down into the ground and might even hit your heart, gives you another perspective of the human being in its context on that planet, because we as a species are quite new to the jungle. Maybe 20,000 years ago or 25,000 years ago or 30,000 years ago, the human species was introduced to the jungle environment. But the jungle as it is exists for millions and millions and millions of years. So I was connecting to that force of everything. And then on the other hand, what happened is I started to drink for the first time sacred ancient medicines, and that was absolutely changing everything too. That realm and that healing I received, the understanding to be able to face specific things, all that realm in itself was just a very new thing. And then, of course, when I went back to Berlin after this, it was impossible to continue life as I had it before, after you have an experience like this. And I was fully immersing myself into the jungle, and I was bringing time, and it was everything. I was like scared, I had fear, I was happy, I was enchanted, I felt liberated, all kinds of emotions. Because for me, the reason to do this journey, the first journey, was to heal my illness for the purpose to live long and happy, right? It's a question about life and death here, why I did that. So I was fully going into it, and it was ripping me apart and putting me together in a new way. And then, of course, everything was new, and then everything changed.
What does it actually mean you went to the jungle? How can we imagine that? You were alone? And what does it mean in fact? You arrive in Cusco or wherever, and then you take a tour, or you take a guide, or you get connected to people who take you there, and then there, what did you do? Where did you stay? How did all these practical things in the way? How can we imagine that? I guess you didn't just live in the jungle under the tree on your own. You found a spot,
no.
And then,
you can try, right? There's a lot of space. But how did it start? Well, I had dreams about this healer. As I said, I was still in Berlin. I was doing some internet research. I found a name on a forum that was discussing visiting healers in the Amazon rainforest from people who have been there before. I resonated with one name. I don't have any idea. I didn't have any idea about all of this. I didn't even speak Spanish at that time. So 0 language skills. this healer, he has a website. He has a small place in the jungle, like a healing center, he's calling it, where he welcomes people who want to work with him. Because originally he's from deeper inside the jungle, but he lives with his family in the city of Iquitos, which is a jungle city in Peru. So I use the translator system to contact him in an email, and I think at that time he had someone helping him with this digital stuff, because in the jungle there's no internet, so they were sending me an answer. And he just said, "You're welcome." He told me that the day I would arrive at the airport, I need to give him my flight details. There would be a driver picking me up. So I booked my flight. I gave him my details. I arrived in Iquitos airport. And then a driver, who's a friend of mine now, he picked me up and he dropped me at a random spot on the road, kilometer 48 outside of Iquitos, next to a small village. And there was this indigenous boy sitting who was waiting for me that I couldn't speak to because I didn't know the language. And he took my stuff, he helped me carry my things, and he was walking into the jungle from there. So, and that was it. And I had to follow him. And the night before it was raining a lot. I was not prepared for this jungle hike. So I was arriving, with like white sneakers after a 40-hour airplane trip from Europe. And we had to wade through the water because the bridge was over flooded. And on my left, like rotten pineapples in the water, one snake I was seeing. I was totally overwhelmed. The hike took like 1.5 hours because it was difficult to walk there because of the rain. And I couldn't even like follow him that fast as he was walking. And I had to carry my stuff over my head. And I nearly slipped walking through the water. The water was up to here. But there was an old woman coming my way from the other side carrying like rice on her head, and she had this wooden stick. So she gave me the wooden stick and I could easily walk to the other side, and then I turned around, but she was gone already. And I never understood, was she real or was she just a helping spirit? So I arrived in that little clearing in the jungle with some huts there. There's a temple, there are some huts for people to live, and there's a kitchen, and there's an access to the river. And so the boy, he dropped my things at one hut, and then I think later that day or next day, the healer arrived. Still, I couldn't talk the language, but somehow we communicated. And yeah, that was my house. That was my home for that while. And I started learning the language in that time, of course, because there was no other choice. And we started working together. In general, when I do these trips, one thing leads to another. Now it's a bit more complex what I'm doing with visiting the tribes in Brazil, but I do it mostly alone, all of these journeys, yeah.
Okay, so basically now you visit different tribes, how can I imagine, you find out, you hear, you talk to other people who visit the tribes, and then you try to go there. How can we imagine that? How does this work?
So the first time that I went to Brazil some years ago to visit the tribes, my intention was that I want to work with the tribes and go deeper in the tribal tradition with the medicines. And then how I ended up where I ended up in the first place was a quite interesting meant to be situation again, like the one I described with the healer who I was dreaming about in my dream 8 months before I even arrived, and then everything was falling into place. So I put out the intention that I want to visit the tribes in Brazil, and then one thing again was leading to the other. I'm going to spare you the story because it's quite a long one again, but it was like one thing happened and then the other thing happened, things you would never expect. And then for Brazil, it's important to contact the FUNAI, which is a government organization which takes care of the indigenous people's rights and land rights. So if you want to visit a tribe, it's good to meet them first. So they know you're in the area and they can assist you in your journey. So I did this. I contacted the FUNAI and they helped me out a lot. They connected me to one tribe that then I connected to very deeply. and they arranged the communication for me. But I had to go get there myself, and also then at that time when I went to Brazil, I didn't speak one word Portuguese, so I was starting from scratch again. But staying with that first tribe, the Puyanawa people that are very dear to me, I met the other tribe people there, and they were inviting me to their villages. So one thing was leading to the other, and then I'm arranging my travels alone with, like a boat, buying gasoline, and then going there. So this is usually how I'm doing.
Okay. And I mean, we refer in the West to the jungle to be the wildest place and that you have to survive. It's you survive or the other survives, survival of the fittest and so on. Is it that dangerous? And especially as a woman? I mean, how can I imagine I would think it's really dangerous. In general, the jungle, and then also traveling alone as a woman, going to different tribes. Isn't there certain problems, aggression, rape? How would you say, is it something that you really have to be dedicated to? Or is it fairly easy to do this type of trips? It sounds really a bit, dangerous, what you describe. Or complicated, at least.
I mean, you don't do this stuff if you don't want to do it. You got to be committed to doing that. So, of course, my story is a bit different because I do it alone all the time. And so maybe I'm supposed to do that and this is my calling. But I never had problems ever in all these years. Not one problem. I was never robbed. I was never raped. And the thing with the lowland jungle in itself is it's dangerous. There are spiders that are dangerous. There are snakes. There's jaguars. There's all kinds of things going on in the jungle, and you got to be aware when you are in the lowland jungle. I mean, you got to be careful. I was sick with some jungle diseases throughout the years that are no fun, that can kill you, like malaria or chikungunya virus that brought me to the edge as well. The jungle is a living entity and it's about life and death, and you are in it. So there's a risk traveling to the lowland jungle and getting sick with something, definitely, or getting like bitten or stung or whatever. You need to be careful, as much as you can. This is one thing. The other thing, when it comes to the context, because I'm alone, I'm kind of, how can I say, positioning myself in a specific energy. Like, I'm oftentimes observing, and I respect the rules of the village that I'm in. I'm more in the background first when I'm arriving for the first time, when I don't know the people, right? It's important that, I mean, I'm not showing off with a big fat camera and technology or equipment because it's altering them. You just gotta be careful. Like, I'm also not like leaving my credit card laying around somewhere. Of course not. I mean, there's some common sense when you travel to these places, that you take care of yourself and stay safe. What I'm always trying is understand the language and learn the language and speak the language. The language is important, an important bridge that overcomes xenophobia. Because still I'm white, and the current situation as it is here in South America, with already indigenous people in Brazil being sick with the coronavirus and the old indigenous trauma getting activated by the white people bringing the diseases like it was with measles and smallpox is very current. It's there, it's real. And a lot of indigenous people and villages have put themselves in self-quarantine right now. So they locked down their villages. No visitors are allowed. So I don't know how the future around that will develop. So we got to see. But there is I heard of a lot of aggression in some jungle cities here in Peru towards white people. So I don't know how my future with traveling to the jungle and the indigenous will change upon this current situation, or when will it come back to its normality. I was always careful and I never felt threatened. The only thing that happened is maybe that an indigenous person is interested in you as a love partner or wanting to marry you. This is what I've experienced, which can happen, right? It's normal. This is the only thing I've ever experienced. But other than that, I never had problems. It is actually, for some very modern tribes, it's not that big deal if people come visit them. It's not a big deal if you have someone who's arranging a trip like this to get there. It's actually for the westernized tribes who are used to working with white people, it's not a big deal. If it's more like a remote thing that you want to do on your own, like I usually do, you gotta have a specific mindset for that. But there's a lot of shamanic healing centers all over the Amazon that are arranging all your trip from airport to hotel to jungle and back, you know. So people who book like healing retreats in the Amazon rainforest usually never have a problem with getting there and getting back because they are taken care of.
What I hear increasingly is that like shamanism, medicine work, or work with the sacred medicines in South America has become a true business. What's your experience? What can you see? Which effects does, you said there is tribes that are more modern, open to Westerners, organizing trips, everything. So how do you see the whole situation with the sacred medicine work in Peru, in Brazil, in other countries? How do you perceive it? And also, what do you experience in the respect of which effect does the influence of medicine work with, I would call it medicine tourists, have on the tribes, on the culture?
Yeah, so that is a very current and interesting topic. There is a lot of, let's call it medicine tourism going on. No, people coming down to South America to work with the sacred medicines because they want to heal something. And to comfort the Western mind and approach, you can't just like say, yeah, just come to my place. You gotta meet them in the Western way. So it's a lot about money when it comes to medicine work. It's a lot of money there that the local people will never see. And it's also a lot about creating a comfort for the Western visitors. So in the jungle, you can have fully equipped toilet and shower as you know it from back home in UK. No difference. So there's a lot happening to create a safe, comforting space for the visitors. And usually the people who own these places are not even indigenous people. They're like people from the Western world who are buying a lot of land in the jungle, and then they have the investment to build a healing center, and then they employ their managers who speak different languages, and they have, a lot of local people working for them. But the question is, do the local people really get the money that they deserve for their work? And usually it's not that. And do the local healers who get like hired by those healing centers really get paid the way they should? And usually it's not like that. Yeah. So it's not uncommon to pay $3,000 now for 10 days ayahuasca work in the jungle.
Okay.
And that's a problem because, for example, here in Peru in the last years, there was a lot of ayahuasca harvested, chacruna harvested, used for making the medicine. You need quite a lot of the plants itself to make the medicine that you can drink. But who's replanting? Who's regrowing? Yeah. So how sustainable is this all? Is this really sustainable? Because a lot of people, they want to heal and they hear of ayahuasca and they book a retreat online and then they go travel to Iquitos, they get picked up, they have intense 10 days in the jungle, they go back home. But they don't know, in the meantime, what does happen behind the scenes? Is that really sustainable for the whole process of healing for themselves if the indigenous and local people get exploited here? And if no one is regrowing ayahuasca, is your healing really that more important? But usually people don't even think about it, and they don't know because it doesn't appear to them. And when it comes to the money, well, the money is definitely changing the indigenous cosmology and view, and even their connection to tradition. And that is, it's not easy for me to accept that. I have been observing it, and I'm observing it more and more, and I'm questioning my relationships, my collaborations for the future with the tribes too, because I don't want to be part of it. Because money makes life easier for them, you know. Back in the days when the first white people visited indigenous uncontacted tribes, they were leaving behind like gifts, like a machete or something like this, things they never had. So there are some like anthropological document reports that you can read, and then the uncontacted tribes found those gifts, and they started using these new tools, and they left behind the old way that they were doing. So this is how progress comes into a civilization, of course, and this is nothing you can change and nothing you will stop. But there are tribes in Brazil that are popular for medicine tourism. There are also people of those tribes are traveling worldwide to share ceremonies. It's a very common thing now. They have very high prices for visitors. You easily can pay $1,000 a week with one of the tribes. And usually it's important to see what do they do with the money. Do they invest it into the village? Do they improve the condition of the village, or do they invest it into a project? Or do they just buy a new phone in town? Or do they just buy like fast food in the city and come back to the village and start eating fast food now and they stop hunting, you know? Or they buy a flat screen TV in the city. They need a generator. They buy a generator. Then they have electricity in the village, and they lose their old ways. Are they really connected to the sacred medicine path, or they are now just interested in the money? So there's a lot of layers to this whole department of question that you just open with that, right? And we have a responsibility here to observe that and evaluate properly. But there is a big shift happening.
So the way I understand it is that the people also, the tribes, the medicine men and women, they also lose a certain level of authenticity. Is that right?
Yeah, it depends on which village or tribe you look at, or which specific example, but something is shifting towards losing something. Yeah, and you can maybe even say losing authenticity. Maybe it's just one person in the village, but everything affects everything. It's a whole environment of living together, so everything will affect everybody.
The way I understand this, the way you live, the way you go forth, you have observed a lot of tribes, you have observed different traditions. What does it mean to do medicine work in an original way, in an authentic way, and what does it mean for the people who do it?
It, first of all, is a commitment. It means commitment. And it means commitment to the way. And the way that I observe and study is the indigenous way. And not all the indigenous way that are still currently active are good examples in my perspective. Because also there's some lack of alignment for indigenous tradition happening right now, because the shift of culture and the coming of money is changing so much that the true nature of their tradition is maybe lost. So maybe they're not a good example for me anymore, but there are good examples out there. So personally, I believe it means you need to be aligned with the teachings of that medicine, and you also compromise some things in your life and you pay a price. But this is how I perceive it personally. So in order to share Kambo, I would like to live its teachings. Because if I share this medicine, and what I'm doing is just like creating the space and the medicine is doing its work, but I still have to be in full alignment to be able to do that. Otherwise, I'm not sharing a truth from the heart. Otherwise, I'm creating a space that is not clean and clear and doesn't show the full respect to the medicine. So we have to be really aware that this is a big responsibility, and we always have to check in to be aligned. And for me personally, it has been a lonely path. Maybe because it's a bit the story of my life to walk my path alone, or a challenge in my life. But it has been aligning and flowing like this. Things have been going that way for me. I was always doing it alone. So to commit to working with the medicine or sharing the medicine, and I'm not living in an indigenous community in the jungle. Yeah, I'm a solo person on my path. I'm not with 500 people from my genetic family in a tribe living somewhere. This is maybe more the story of my families, but not my own personal story in this lifetime. So I am quite a lot with myself in kind of a dieta or diet, especially this last year outside of the jungle. I have been in a diet with myself a lot. And it means that I have to be careful with my own energy and what I put into my system. If I'm telling someone about dieta and diet with Kambo, I have to live it too. And at the same time, enjoy life as it comes and find a balance. It's about a sustainable balance here. And it's important that if you say something, if you share a talk, an idea with someone, I have to walk that talk. And of course, we are not perfect. I'm also just a human being. But what I'm doing in that moment, I can try and do it impeccable. And not just do it with heart and love, but with awareness. And of course, it's a path and it's a progress. And the way I'm working now and sharing information about Kambo or sharing Kambo is different than 3 years ago. It's different than 2 years ago, for example. It has shifted. And we have to be aware that we can always learn more. There's always so much more to learn. That's why it's important for me to continue traveling to the tribes and connect with more insights and myths and stories and cosmology and views and perception and approaches, because it's never ending. It's a vast ocean of knowledge out there. And at the same time, it's important to stay humble. Very, very humble with that. Because quickly things can come to your mind. If it's like a gratitude from a person that they say you have brought them this healing, which I don't think, it's always important to stay humble and detached as well. But it is a commitment, and personally for my own life, it means I say yes to a commitment because I want to. And there are things that I'm not missing and lacking, but there are parts of my life that I'm just not living like other people would live them, but they have other lives too. What I'm doing is maybe quite specific. It's not the same energy like living in the city and doing specific things in the city. It's not that anymore. I'm living a totally different life. So my life is different for the way I'm living it. Yeah.
Are you now talking about your specific life, or is it something that applies also to the indigenous people and especially the people who do healing work within the indigenous tribes?
Yeah, so it depends on which tradition of indigenous healing are we looking at, but there are very common ways for the healers of their villages to learn their ways, and that is mostly in isolation and seclusion for a long time, maybe for 10, 20, 30 years, until they receive the permission to start working with people. And there is a tribe in Colombia, the Kogi. They have an understanding that they have people in their tribe who are talking to Mother Earth, and they are transmitters for the message of Mother Earth. To be able for them to receive the messages from Mother Earth and give them to their people, they have to be receptive for it. And to learn to be receptive for it, after they are born, I don't know exactly when, but they live for a specific amount of years in darkness alone. So their senses get sharpened and they get in tune to speak with the spirits. So that is a commitment, right? If you imagine from the Western perspective, you're gonna live in an earth hole for 9 or 10 years until you can serve your community. Other healers that I know, they have been receiving plant dietas and they have been living in isolation for 20 years and just in the jungle with the plants, doing that work. And one healer that I know, before he wants to have sex with his wife, he has to ask permission from the plants. And another healer I know, he has this kind of codex. Whenever he meets the people he works with, he never gives them a hug. He always has a 2-meter distance to the people. And I was asking him one time why, and he said it's for reason of energy. Don't take it personal. It's just that, I need to be in my own energy and I'm not allowed to come closer to you. Whereas on the opposite side, you have people that call themselves, I'm that healer, and they're going to rape women during an ayahuasca ceremony. And these stories, they happened. You can just find information online on these things. People abuse their position. But to be able to maintain the work that you share, you have to maintain a specific way of living. So a price that you pay can be many things in that realm, also for the indigenous people, but you don't see it like something you lose, but it's like something you gain with a specific attitude and behavior and keeping the rules and the framework, so you can serve the people with what you have learned. So it's kind of a progress commitment. So you can add, basically, it's for the indigenous people who are sharing the work or who are the bridge keepers between the worlds. It means a lot of isolation time, a lot of fasting, a lot of time with their objects in the jungle, the plants, the animals, a lot of time alone. Yeah. So it means specific things for your experience about life and world, but it's focused on your teaching, on your receiving of those teachings.
Okay. So basically what you're saying is this is a very specific path that you decide to go and commit yourself when you become a healer with sacred medicines. That is essential to the work that a healer does, the way I understand it. And also, yes, please.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is when you say that you decide for, it's oftentimes not that it gets decided for you or it happens. It just happens. It's not a conscious decision that happens. For some people, it's you're going to be the next one because your grandfather has been the healer of the tribe, or something happens in your life and you get stumbling on that path through something that happened in your life, and you're on that path and flow, and it was never planned. So it has different levels to that. But once you're there, you commit to it, yes.
Okay. And there's different levels of commitments, not only by people go to visit the tribes, but also within the tribes now, with this whole change of how much the influence, Western influence, is on tribes as well, the way I understand it.
Exactly, yeah.
So you talked about sacred medicine work, and for me a question really is, we talked a bit about how it is exploited in a touristic way to some extent. You talked about that it is scarce, and really what I experience a lot now in the West is that, for example, ayahuasca has become very fashionable, even to the extent that I hear about cool Berlin startups doing ayahuasca retreats for their team retreat once a year and things like that. So what's your position on that? How do you differentiate what is sacred medicine work, what is recreational use, and how important also do you find the context of how medicine is taken, apart now from the dieta, what we've talked about, and in which context it is taken? Do you think it makes a difference if the medicine is taken in the jungle, or if it's taken in the West, maybe even in a city? Does it make a difference at all? Doesn't make any difference? So it's a few questions really, but I think they're all connected.
Yeah, definitely. So what I observe, and what you also mentioned, is the popularity around those sacred medicines. So first of all, what are sacred medicines? Let's say for the history of humanity, human beings in different traditions and cultures have used what Mother Earth is giving them to connect with the spirits or other dimensions. Might it be magic mushrooms or peyote in Mexico, ayahuasca in South America, so many other possibilities all over the world. So sacred medicine was always used in a context of indigenous tradition for healing or crossing over a passage like a rite, for initiation, for consulting the spirit about something that is happening in the village, to find a solution, to connect with ancestors. So the context of sacred medicines is old and ancient, and we have to see it in its context as well. Because nowadays, when indigenous people drink ayahuasca regularly, like some tribes once a week, every Saturday, for example, I have experienced, they have this. They drink once a week all their life, let's say, ayahuasca. So it's implemented in their everyday life and culture to do so, because they may discuss something that is important for their village, or this is the way they reenact a ritual and maintain connection. And it's important to stay strong as a community to do this practice together. And they still chant the old healing songs, and they perform the old dances, and they have a strong choreography and structure around this. And they share prayer words or words of gratitude. So when we talk about sacred medicine, there's this background to it. And when we talk about sacred medicine, there's this new thing going on now, that the popular thing that people are into it. Yeah. What I sometimes have the feeling is that people perceive those sacred medicines like, I'm going into a supermarket in the Western world, for example, in a city. Yeah. I'm going into the supermarket and I can get everything at any time in the year. And all I have to do is take it and put it into my basket and pay for it. And then I have it. And there's a mentality about healing and approaching sacred medicines that is similar to I'm going to the supermarket and I can get everything at any time, whatever I want and need, as long as I pay for it. But that is far away from what I have described just now, the indigenous way, the context of using sacred medicines there. Because I understand everybody who wants to consult sacred medicines to tap into a healing, to learn more about themselves, to heal something specific. We have this option nowadays. And the bridge between the indigenous, hopefully still sustainable context, there are uncontacted tribes that we don't know about, they for sure still do it like this, and the bridge to where we are at right now, we need to share information and education to make that happen. Because if we approach it in the way of the supermarket, I want a quick fix, and as long as I pay my $3,000, after 10 days, I'm going to be enlightened. Because the approach oftentimes is the approach of consuming. I consume something, so I will feel better. Yeah, so I'm going to drink ayahuasca and it's going to heal me and I'm going to feel better. But this is not the truth. I would not say that when you start drinking ayahuasca and when you drink ayahuasca and you drink it a lot and you drink it for many years that you're going to heal. I think that's not true. What ayahuasca is doing, or any other sacred medicine, and what the person that is like in between is doing, the person that is the healer who is creating that space that you can experience it, they are tools and they are helpers. They support you to enter into something where you can perceive and learn something about yourself, where you have a possibility to enter the realm of understanding. Yeah, because what happens when you work with sacred medicine, something opens up, something gets moved, you see something. You usually see it though from the perspective of where you are right now, in your perception, in your mind. Yeah. But still, when the ceremony is over, the hardest part is starting, because you have to go back home and you got to implement and integrate what you have learned in that ceremony or what you have seen there. Because that's the hardest part. You have to change, and you have to commit to changing your life in the 3-dimensional. It's easy to drink ayahuasca, to sit in a sacred space of ceremony that gets hold, and to experience it. It's a challenge, but it's easier than implementing the teachings in your everyday life. And also oftentimes what happens is that it's hard to work with these medicines. It's not always a clear message you receive from ayahuasca or something like this. What do you do with what you experience? Because oftentimes in the old way, if you want a healing for yourself, you would never even drink the medicine. The traditional way also was that you were consulting the healer of your village with the intention to heal, and he would make a ceremony for you, but he would drink the medicine. Only he. And you would sit in that circle, or she, yeah? And that person would consult the medicine and work on you, but you would be just sitting there, or maybe you wouldn't even be sitting there, maybe you would be just in your hut, in your bed, because you wouldn't be able to walk or something. But the traditional way is actually that. But nowadays, we come like running to drink those medicines. But what is the context behind it? Because it's challenging to get it, and it's a quick shift that happens in your whole system. How do you really digest all of that information? This shouldn't be taken lightly to work with the sacred medicines, especially because they are sacred. And I know that we are like, our nature is that we are curious. We want to try things out, right? And that's okay. But as I see it, if you have a specific intention to work with a specific medicine, or even more than one medicine, stay with that intention and remind yourself. Healing takes a long time. It's not going to be done in one day or in 1 year. You know, the more medicine I'm drinking, the more I understand that the healing happens in different ways and not just when I'm drinking medicine. So you have to be aware that, of course, it's beautiful to dwell in those realms of non-dualistic Buddhist peace and love and light. And we all want to be there all the time. That's also our nature. It can become addictive to always be in those enchanted spaces. And we know that a lot of psychoactive molecules, alkaloids, they help us fight depression. They make us more light, more happier, more enchanted. And of course, we want more of that. And that's also natural and normal. But we have to really check in the purpose for why am I joining that ceremony, or why do I want to do that medicine work? Because usually people start with a very specific thing in their life. And then what I observe is you can really get lost in keep drinking the medicines. And you maybe don't even know why. You're just in that flow of medicine community, medicine world. You're always on that energy. You're vibrating high. You like the social aspect of it. And it's all fine. But is that the true nature of why we should work with those medicines? Because again, there's no endless supply. Someone has to regrow that ayahuasca vine. Someone has to take care of the chacruna. What about all the Kambo frogs? You know, is it really necessary to smoke a Bufo alvario's medicine 15, 30 times in a row? Is that necessary? Aren't we exploiting the medicines by not knowing why we are working with them anymore? You can drink ayahuasca for years, but you are still the same person with the same problems. Why is that? Because you have not done your work in this world here, in the 3D. And that is the challenge, and that is the painful thing. And this is a tendency that I see, and we have to be very aware and careful around this. Because I'm not talking of a theory. I'm sharing something I have been going through myself. That's why I can share it.
Thanks for sharing that. So what I always say, there is a difference between drug use and drug abuse. And in between lines now, you have talked about this, but to be very specific, could you point out what your definition or what your ideas are of the difference of the sacred medicine use in a healthy way and compared to what it would be in a recreational way? I'm sure it's cannot be a clear-cut definition, but what are your thoughts? How would you differentiate what is the recreational use and what it needs and what it takes to be medicine work that is really where the use of the medicine is not recreational but really medical?
Yeah, maybe we can even say therapeutic approach towards a recreational approach. So a general thing that I believe applies to making out the difference here is taking breaks. Taking breaks from working with sacred medicines and using those breaks when you are not always going into the DMT worlds, you know, but where you are staying in the 3D and tapping into what you have experienced from this perspective and from this dimension. Because traditionally, and if we study a little bit about ancient civilizations, the aim should not be that we always keep drinking ayahuasca until the end of the life, or we like constantly need to consult the medicines. That shouldn't be the aim. It shouldn't be that you're going to drink ayahuasca for the next 20, 30, 40 years unless you are living in a indigenous context, like in a village where this is the tradition and this is how you maintain your connection to the spirit. Well, this is another story. I'm talking about really the someone coming from the Western world and looking for healing. I don't believe that these medicines are out there and that Pachamama, Mother Earth, is giving us these possibilities so that we always now are going to drink it and use them all the time. I don't think so. I believe you have to check in with yourself for why you are doing what you're doing, as I already mentioned. What do I want to work on? What do I want to heal? But taking breaks from these medicines. Because I also had a time in my life when I was so much in that flow that I was using specific medicines super frequently. But on the other hand, also, if you share the medicines, maybe that's another story if you work with it a lot yourself. But I personally believe it's good to take breaks where, like, of a year, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 years, and really try to implement those teachings, no matter how hard it seems and how much easier it would seem now to drink a cup of ayahuasca in a ceremony and get more loosened up and relaxed again about something that we couldn't solve. But healing takes time. And I was working a lot in my ceremonies in all these 7 years now on my relationship with my parents, for example, like seeing a lot of visions, having a lot of energy work happening around that, purging a lot of those old energies that have not been serving me. But the true practice comes when I meet my parents in real life and I'm spending time with them. And this is where I can put it into practice. And this is where the real test is happening. And I appreciate the possibility that we can do it in the 3-dimensional. But if it's just about getting high and being always in that space and not being able to take the break, being afraid of taking a break from those medicines, because you are not just drinking ayahuasca, you are much more than that. You should still see it in its whole sacredness, but as a helping tool with a limited supply on the planet. And we also have to feel into the idea of sharing. Yeah, there is a very sad story going on around the Bufo alvarius toad in the Mexican desert. Yeah. This species will go extinct. The medicine is very popular. People use it. People overuse it. Is it really necessary for one person to smoke it 40 times? Why don't you just use it a couple of times and think of, okay, now more people can use the medicine I haven't used to tap into the same I have been tapping to in. And this is something that is lacking entirely, an understanding that not many people have. And that's why I was giving the example of consuming. We go into the supermarket, it's always there and we buy it. So this kind of approach, this kind of attitude is not an attitude from someone who always lives in the jungle and, who lives self-sustained from the jungle in his or her village, but that comes from a Western matrix, so to say. And we have to be really careful here and always checking in with ourselves.
So you live in a very different type of reality than most people. And I would be really interested in which paradigms you believe need to be challenged today. Could be now in medicine work, but it could be also like in general what your perspective is.
Yeah, in my answer, I would like to focus on the linguistic approach to what I would wish for the world, or what I believe in is important. Maybe I can share it like this, if it's okay for you.
Sure.
So I believe that, first of all, it's about an understanding what is the connection to myself. Who am I and what am I? Because it's important to put that focus on ourselves first to be able to understand the rest, because we are highly complex and sensitive beings, and we carry a lot of memories, emotions, behavioral patterns, traumatic experience, all of us in our lives. And we are all going through the same experiences in life. We have to understand that we are all the same in what we go through. If you are heartbroken and I'm heartbroken, we're going through the same suffering. So it's a shared experience, actually. And if I have a cancer, but you have chronic headache, it's what we are going through, and there's no better or worse. It's exactly what we experience and what we wish to be liberated from, right? And body, mind, and heart, we are layers of so many things. We are so sensitive beings, and our body, our minds, and our heart gonna show us the way. So we gotta tune in and observe the signs, because we are all energy and vibration. And to be able to heal, first of all, we have to understand that I have to respect and I have to love myself. There's no other way around it. We have the power, everybody has the power to connect with themselves and to start this healing process. Yeah, we have to connect with the idea of self-empowerment again. It's important that we understand and we tap into this power of, yes, I can create my own reality. And we can take action to create our own reality at every moment in time. Right now and right now and right now, you can create your own reality. And it's important to be grateful for the life that we are having and for all its teachings that are coming, because it means that there is a universal flow in everything that is happening, even in the current situation. It's just the perspective. Where do we put ourselves into? What do we do with a challenge in life? And to be able to reconnect with ourselves, not just with the practice of being aware of self-respect and self-love and the awareness around of this and the awareness that we are all in this together. It's important that we reconnect to our home. And my home is not this house. It's my temporary housing, but my home is this planet. It's Mother Earth. It's Pachamama. And if we want to connect to our essence, we gotta live in companionship with nature, and we gotta live in companionship with the elements. And we have the chance to tap into an old knowledge of health and healing and living together by consulting the indigenous wisdom and the indigenous ways. So just to name the topics that I'm referring to is, for example, farming, hunting, our relationship to food, our relationship to fasting, our relationship to prayer and chanting and dancing, the traditions, the rituals, the rites, what's the source of our being, what's the sacredness of being. That's very important, that we reconnect to those understandings, because usually the Western way of life is a globalized way of life, and we are so unrooted. But the indigenous way, it happens in a tribal way, in a community way, and we can understand and learn that it's important to respect yourself, each other, your surrounding, your environment, as much as having compassion and supporting each other. Also by sharing, we can tap into using sacred natural medicines, and we can learn more about the spirit in everything by understanding that everything belongs together. But oftentimes in Western life, we are lacking many of those things. A healthy connection to food, a healthy connection, an aware connection to the land that you're living on. What importance does the land you're living on has, what you're surrounded by? What kind of community are you living in? So by connecting to an indigenous way of living, because there's a lot of wisdom in that. It's not about perfection, but there's a lot of wisdom that has been repeated over thousands and thousands of years in different indigenous contexts. We can connect to an understanding of what is our true nature and what is the important value of living. And it's not just about, I want to heal and I will drink ayahuasca and I have my shaman and they're going to heal me. I think that's wrong. We should not abuse those sacred medicines, and we should not give our power to, oh, they're going to heal me. The doctor in the hospital is going to heal me. The shaman is going to heal me. You're the only one who's going to heal yourself, and no one else. You can use amazing tools and teachings and understanding to put it into practice, but it's still going to be you who's doing the work. No one will do it for you.
Thank you. That was very enlightening. So, yeah, my final question is, I'd like to know what you want your legacy to be. Meaning, basically, that what impact do you want to have had on humanity once you leave this lifetime?
It would be great to inspire just one person with more loving connection to themselves and to save some jungle land.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being on my show. And
thank you for having me so much. Thank you so much, Hermano.
I send you all my best wishes to Peru.
Thank you so much. Hush, hush.
Thank you for staying tuned for this edition of Challenging Paradigm X. If you like this episode with Hauxita, feel free to share it with your community so Hauxita gets her message spread even further. Also, if you're interested to get in touch with her to get more insight or have any questions, Hauxita is happy to reply to you. You will find her contact in the description. Apart from that, if you like this episode, please hit subscribe, rate it, and if you find some time, write me a review. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to contact me. And if you like this podcast, you can support it through Patreon. Next week, we're up with the next episode of Challenging Paradigm X. Until then, I wish you a great week and say ciao.